if you lag around on bodywork and just kind of like go to it and work on it a little bit and get frustrated and then walk away, it takes 10 times longer than just doing it right the first time, working through it, getting it done. And I find Bondo work now is kind of like meditative for me because I'm good at it. I can do it fast for the most part. That's probably like one of the things that I'm really good at is doing Bondo work because I did a lot of it back in over the last 3 decades. Well, I managed to get the inside of the floorboards almost finished seam sealed, so I can just start spraying some more primer. But I got all the bodywork done on all the seams and anywhere that I wanted to fix on the inside of the floors on the 58. I wanted to have something to show you guys this week and get it all primered and show you all the bodywork steps. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and wait till I get the bodywork on the underside all done and show you it all when it's all done from front to the rear wheel wells, and then I'll finish the trunk. And hopefully I'm going to get some help over here next week and get somebody started on that frame so we can start getting this thing all built and put back together ASAP. Getting ready to primer it right now, but I wanted to show you before I put primer on it what it looks like, what the filler looks like, and give you a rundown of how I got to this point. So as you can see, the filler is all done, and if you don't know what 180 looks like, this is what it looks like. Everything's done in 180 grit, finished. There is some metal showing through. This thing doesn't have a lot of filler. You can see some metal all around the edges and in some areas, and the floor is a little wavy. I'm not going to get too carried away with the inside because there is going to be some sound deadening pads that get glued to the floor, and of course you're going to have heat barrier padding, and also you're going to have carpet. So you won't even see any of this stuff. You got your seat risers right here. I went ahead and seam sealed everything that I thought would benefit from not only sound deadening, but actually sealing the seams together. I know on some of these cars, these older cars, didn't have seam sealer in some of these areas. I believe it did here on where the floor welds to the rocker, but for the most part, they didn't have a lot of seam sealer on these cars. But these cars always benefit from almost like gluing it together. It's not really gluing together, but you're filling the seams, and that just helps with corrosion protection, and it also just looks more aesthetically pleasing. You know, on here I didn't get the panels perfectly aligned on the edge here where I welded because there was multiple panels. We had the front panel, this center section that I built, and then these rear seat pans, and they were all kind of different sizes, and I didn't take the time to go ahead and make a nice straight line because I knew I was going to put seam sealer over it anyway. And like I said, nobody's going to see the inside of the floor, but we did want it to look like it is restored, like it has an original floor in it. And so we went around, fixed all the bodywork, and also fixed any pitting that the floors had in it to give it the appearance that nothing ever happened. And that's the point, in my opinion, of how these cars should look. Like, It came from the factory. So that's what we're doing. I don't know how you do it, or I don't know how other shops do it, but that's what we're doing. So it is all body work. And like I said, a lot of this is machine finish and hand finish. And some of it is a real quick block where I couldn't get the machine in there. I went around with the soft block and just blocked this stuff and sanded it all flat. But there is some imperfections on the inside here, and I'm not going to worry too much about that.
Get dangerous. Get dangerous. Shameless. Facing. Shameless. Get dangerous. Shameless. 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 Get dangerous. Get dangerous.
My neighbors will come by and they'll be like, "You're sanding the same spot over and over. It looks like," and when you do pass by the shop, I'm sure if you look in here, I'm on different sections of the floor sanding multiple times. So they're probably thinking like, what the hell's taking so long? But what people don't realize on these cars, if you have multiple repair sections to do, that every section you have to do takes a different procedure when it comes to sanding. Some you have to get in there by hand and really dig out some of these body lines. I know it's underneath, we're not getting too crazy carried away, but I still am going around and pecking down any little high spots with the pick hammer, and I am making sure that the underside of this car looks perfect. If perfect was a thing, which it's not, we're going to get it as close as to perfect as possible. And the other problem is, like on these floor braces, is that there's no room for a throw for a swing. A throw would be like the stroke, right? There's no real room for a throw in there. You have to just kind of get in there with your thumb or your finger and just dig those out. And they take some time. For every indentation, something like that, it's down here too on the bottom. You focus. Down there too on the bottom, you're doing all that in there kind of by hand with the soft block. And when I say soft block, I mean a foam padded bendable block. If you ever are getting a car done to this level, I mean, look at back there, all that filler that's on just that one side of the rear seat pan, because I had to do a bunch of splices in on that panel. And not only that, whatever dents I fixed. So if your body man is taking a long time, look at the amount of work that he's doing. Sometimes it's not because he's slow or he is procrastinating. It's because this is a lot of work. Something I cannot deny though is that one of these jobs in the past would have taken me forever, not because of my skill level. Well, take that back. Partly because of my skill level and partly because I would get so frustrated with having to hand sand all the little crevices and creases. If you've ever done body filler work, you know what I'm talking about. And I would just get frustrated and walk away from the job and then get distracted because I wasn't accomplishing what I wanted to fast. And in those days, I wanted everything to be instant. And I think a lot of times people want things to be instant, but it took stacking skills and just learning little by little. And finally one day I was just able to like fly through doing this type of work. But before that, I would run like hell from any hard or what I assume to be hard work. But it took A, belief that I could do the work, and B, doing the work and not running from the work and focusing on the work to be able to do what I do now. And this really is like a meditation for me now. When I block Santa car, I can see what it's gonna look like before it's even formed or put together. I can already kind of get a picture in my mind for my creation. And that's all it takes, is getting the picture in your mind and bringing awareness to why you quit, and focusing and taking off a little bit at a time until it compounds and compounds. And pretty soon you're able to just get through these without a headache, without banging your head against the wall. And you're able to conquer your goals quicker. Everybody has to start somewhere. Don't get me wrong though. I'm not saying it's not a good thing to walk away from a job sometimes, because sometimes out of frustration, you can just start to just mess something up and it totally goes south. That's when you walk away. Let it be for an hour, for 2 hours, or even a day. Come back the next day, but do not give up. Well, I kind of fucked up. Well, I did fuck up. If it wasn't for fuck ups, I don't think I would have learned as much as I learned over the years. One of my friends said to me one time, if it wasn't for you fucking everything up all the time, you wouldn't know what to do. I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point. You fuck it up, then you fix it again, because you can. So I'm mocking up the emergency brake cable pulley, goes here, laid against this floor right here. And then this is where your gas pedal goes here. Well, you can kind of see right here in this area right here, in this area, there was some holes. I had to weld up and make new holes and scoot this pedal over about 3/16 of an inch. I can measure it and be exact and see. About 5/8 actually. So what had happened was, so with blind holes like these, you're just kind of measuring out the hole and putting the mount where you think it goes, because you have no measurements to go off of for these old cars, or I haven't been able to find them or didn't look for them, because normally what I do is just find a reference point and then make a point and then do a bunch of measuring and make a bunch of intersecting points, and then boom, I find my hole. But what I didn't account for is this floor is aftermarket, of course, and the old section that I cut out to do all the reference markings and the points on was different than this floor. So I'm almost kind of worried about this emergency brake cable pulley because hopefully it's in the right spot so it doesn't like rub on the frame or something stupid. That's the only thing I'm worried about now, but I was able to successfully dissect the parts off the old original piece and put them on here. But then when I mocked up the gas pedal for the final time, I realized that I had welded the two holes over about 5/8 inches too far because I was measuring off the old floor and not this floor and just mocking up the gas pedal. So I should have mocked up the gas pedal from the initial start, but I trusted my measurements and I went and I welded everything fully. And so then I had to clean these fasteners or this hardware off this floor again, just by a die grinder and a Dremel, and just clean all the weld off that I had welded on and fill the holes on the floor that I initially did on this aftermarket floor. And then I had to clean all that up, and now I made the other holes. I mocked up the pedal for real this time with the lever and everything. It was over just enough. I mean, it would almost work, but it was rubbing on some rubber pieces on the actual pedal. The lever was rubbing, so it would have just been a pain in the ass. I tried to bend the lever a little bit, but that stuff's all hardened steel, so it wasn't really bending. I put it in the vise and tried to bend the lever, and then it was kind of interfering with this other hole that's on the floor. And I said, you know what? Let me just bite the bullet and then go ahead and fill these holes and make new holes and move that pedal over. But yeah, that up. Nombre. Puros pinches fallas. Are we having fun yet? So boom, that's where it should be at. Lines up right on that nylon pad that mounts to the underside of this pedal, and that lever point hits right on that nylon pad so it slides nice and easy. Imagine this thing had an LS in it. Also, the other thing that I wanted to point out is always throw your brake pedal up there, because these two work as a unit, gas, brake, and you want to make sure that that pedal is a comfortable enough distance away from this brake pedal, so you're not always lifting your foot, thunk, thunk. And that was another reason why I moved this thing over 5/8 of an inch, because when I lifted the pedal up and then I measured the distance between the brake pad and here, and then I measured like my car, for instance, I was like, let me just get a rough idea. This was a little bit too close. So here, as well as being away from that hole right there and in the middle of this lever, it also is a comfortable enough distance away from that brake pedal. And I just clamped that in there, and I should have done this shit from the beginning, and all I would have had to do is just cover those holes real quick and not have to take all the weld off those fasteners and then re-weld them again. So, but you live and you learn. What I have to add to that is that these big projects, when you get going on them, and on this thing, I've been just turning and burning, getting these floors finished, plasticed up, or finished surface, whatever you want to call it, body worked. When you get them into primer, that's kind of an easy job for me. So like doing Bondo or filler work, I've been doing that for years. I kind of breeze through that, even though some people struggle with it, I don't. And then I switch back to metal work, and I just try to like turn and burn through that. Well, you get too confident doing this type of work, and doing a full restoration where you're doing the metal work, I'll wire this thing. My boy Vic is going to help me with some of the frame, just because we want to get this thing done faster. He's doing the frame. He's going to help me restore the convertible top. We're figuring all that out, but hopefully he will help us restore the convertible top, rack, and he's got the frame right now. He's doing the frame, so I'm not going to have to do everything. But typically I would do everything. I would build the frame, I would build the suspension, I would do the wiring, I would do the initial startup on the motor, make sure all the drivetrain's good, go through all the drivetrain, go through all the accessories, paint everything, paint all the brackets. I mean, I'm doing the metal work, body work. And on the last car I did the interior because we just dyed everything and installed it again and made it look good. I glued everything back. It was already a done job. So all I had to do was glue some little vinyl back, dye some vinyl, and really just detail it and put new carpet and install everything. And it was good to go. So I even did the interior on the last job. But what my point is that if you get too comfortable on doing this type of work where you're doing one-off fabrication, you're figuring out mounting points and things like that, if you don't double and triple check your work, you will have to redo and go back to the drawing board on some stuff. It always happens whenever I'm too comfortable and I'm just like, oh, I already know it's good, measured it, good to go, slap it in, let's go. And then boom, wouldn't you know it, it's off by like 5/8 of an inch. It happens to everybody. I've seen show cars out there that are magazine cars, magazine cover cars, or car cover magazine show cars. Car cover, what the hell? Magazine cover show cars, centerfold cars, I guess you could call them, and they have shit that I could find on it. I seen this one car and I'm like, oh, they repainted the fender. This is the first time I ever seen this car, and they repainted the fender because the color's just a little bit like that, just that little bit off. You could see it. I've seen stuff like that. So it's not a huge deal, but you don't want to be redoing stuff for sure. So just take the time to double and triple check like I should have did, but I didn't before fully welding something. I could have just tacked it on there, see if it worked, boom, remove the tacks. But no, my dumbass just turns and burns and then welds the whole shit together. And then boom, bada beep, bada bam, karma, baby. Hey. But that's the difference, is finishing versus giving up. I could have looked at that thing and said, and back in the day, trust me, that shit would have set me off. I would have walked away from that job for like 2 days. And then you come back and then you don't even remember where the hell you're at. But no, you just keep pushing, get through it, even though it's a pain in the ass and you don't want to go to work the next day. Like, that gas pedal. You just get it done. And that's how you get through those times when you're sucking big time, but it makes you, it's almost like now it's like a challenge. Like, oh, like now I can see if I can get a little Dremel in there and just grind my little life away until I get all that weld out of there, and then be able to like just get a little panel separator and just get in there and then get that thing off there. I could have just went and got some new hardware, but they don't have anything like that around here. I'd have to special order it. And I was like, you know what? I want to get this floor primered. So I'm going to do whatever I got to do, take the little welds off, re-weld this hardware in there and figure it out and get it done. That way I can primer the floor and be done with that floor once and for all. I've been prepping and finalizing bodywork all day. Right now, what I'm doing is prepping this thing for primer. I got 2 more spots left where I have to do bodywork on 2 seams. Tomorrow, cross our fingers, I'm gonna try to get here early and knock out the bottom of one side of the floor and actually 2 sections on the, I have to flip this thing over. Today, what I did is go around and sand the whole thing where I could get to, and then tomorrow I'll flip it around and where I have access to, or where I have good visibility and good access, I will give the other side a whole sanding. But for now, this whole side facing down is all sanded for primer, and then I got to flip it to the other side, and there's 2 spots of bodywork that I got to do. Hopefully I won't find anything else, because I've been finding little things as I go, and I just want to fix everything. But I'm going to get it decent enough to where it looks the same on both sides. And I've said this in my prior videos about this car, is it'll probably live on a 4-post lift, because this is a part of a collection that the owner has. So we want the underside to look nice. And then I can finally move on to the trunk. I got a friend right now working on the frame, and he is going to be done probably within the next couple weeks with the frame. I will put the motor on a stand and we'll send it off to the machine shop to get built. I'm gonna gasket the tranny. It's an old Power Glide, clean it up, probably paint it, cast blast or something, who knows. But we're gonna clean up the tranny, make sure all the gaskets are brand new, go through, change the filter. But those Power Glides are pretty much, especially if they're not running a bunch of power, they're pretty much bulletproof. So we're gonna change the gear ratio, posi, so this thing can run 13s and still run on the freeway. And it's getting airbagged, not hydraulics. The owner was like, you're putting so much work into this thing. I don't know why he don't want to lift it. I would lift it, but that's up to the owner. He wants something that rides nice. He recently bought a car with air ride, and compared to all his other cars that have hydraulics, he's like, oh, I want this thing to ride nice so he can drive it. So it'll be his first convertible Impala by me done. So I get why he would want to drive it. It's going to be a nice car. So that's where we're at. as you can see behind me, the belly front section of this car is still not primered. But yesterday I spent all day, and yes, I can probably spend another day on the underside of this floor section. These flies are brutal out here in the cuts. I could probably spend another day, honestly, going over this thing and just perfecting every little aspect and trying to get all the 80 grit scratches out of this. But the reality of it is it's a floor section, and I probably already got carried away. Yesterday I went around and made sure this thing was prepped nice, because as much time as I spent in bodywork on this thing, it would be stupid to half-ass prep this thing and have a layer, whether it be primer or paint or all of it, peel off later or start coming off. So I made sure that I scotch-brighted this thing from front to back yesterday and got in every nook and cranny and crevice and crack that I could get into with a scuff pad. Beyond that, I hit the whole thing with 120 on the primered areas. Actually, sorry, with a 220 grit on the primered areas. And now what I'm doing is I got the old caulking gun out, and I'm going to run seam sealer in every seam that I see fit and that I think will look good. This thing originally didn't have very much seam sealer on it, but I think it just looks better. I've said in previous videos, or probably in this video before, that I just think it looks more professional when everything's seamed together with caulking and looks like one solid piece. Looks more professional in my opinion, and just looks cleaner if you do the seam sealer right. If you just do a shitty job on the seam sealer and just paint over that, that's terrible. I'm gonna put seam sealer on now, primer over that, and then actually sand the seam sealer smooth if I get any little rough spots that I need to take care of. But other than that, we are finally gonna prime this thing. It's all masked up, ready to go. I'm gonna wipe it down now and then start seam sealing and then just start primering. Hey, you can hear that fool's laugh and shit. That's his. Well, I started to seam seal everything and I stopped because there is so much seam sealer on this thing. I want to use water-based seam sealer. All they have locally is solvent-based, and I don't want to travel to go get some water-based sealer right now, some water-based seam sealer. So I seam sealed what I could where I was going to brush on, and did that. And now I'm just going to go ahead and primer and get some water-based seam sealer. And before I paint this thing, I'll go around, because I'm really good with the water-based seam sealer, and I'll go around and I'll seam seal then. But we're finally going to get some primer on this thing, all masked up. I got it facing this side, and I'm going to start primering right now. So finally. I did when I came in was just start getting after it on the floor, on the 58, on the inside, from where I had to peck down high spots on the bottom side. In hindsight, I probably should have done the underside of the floor bodywork first. That way I knew for sure that all those dents were pecked down, or the high spots were pecked down with the hammer. And then I wouldn't have, in theory, cracked the Bondo that was already on the upper side, on the inside of the floor, inside the car. But neither here nor there. Sometimes whenever you're doing these cars, you have to make a decision and just keep moving. This is the last little spot right here. I just wanted to end this video by saying thank you, especially if you've made it this far to the end of the video. I know some of these videos can be long and drawn out, but the process on this car has been long and drawn out because this car in particular feels like it's been on extra hard mode, extra long mission, like if it was a video game. Even though you don't see the floor on the inside, or you don't see it as much as the outside of the car, it was probably one of the hardest parts on fixing this car because they had done such a terrible job on the previous restoration or previous whatever they did. I wouldn't even call it restoration. They just basically threw this car together for sale and sold it. And then it had, obviously it's a 58, so it had previous damage or previous repairs. And back in the 60s and 70s, they just hammered on stuff and bondoed it up. So I'm fixing a lot of old repairs from probably the 60s and 70s and 80s, and also the previous restoration was just a terrible half-assed job. So it's been extra hard mode on all of it. Thank you for watching and getting through it with me. I got more to come. This is all previous footage, kind of going back in time on this particular part of the build, and I have a lot more to come. I'm already onto the trunk, close to getting the trunk all aligned. I have a couple more days on aligning the trunk to the trunk jamb, or quarter panels on the top, and I am gonna start cutting the trunk floor out of this thing, and the rear lower quarters, inner and outer, spare tire holder on this car, and fixing the rear body panel as well. I've got a lot of the rear body panel already fixed. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you're liking these videos or it's bringing you some value or teaching you some stuff. All right, I'm out. Peace.